Hurricane Lee looks to make landfalls late on Saturday. It's Lee weather team meteorologist Joe Martucci. No, our weather team is not named after Hurricane Lee. It's named after Lee Enterprises, which is the parent company of the website you're probably watching this on. So I appreciate you watching this here on Friday night. Let's get into our Hurricane Lee notes. Saturday night landfall expected more than likely in Nova Scotia, although it could just clip eastern Maine, and we'll show you that in our forecast cone. Tropical storm force winds expected well outside of the center, and heavy rain and storm surge both look to be likely. We have a tropical storm warning in effect for southeastern Massachusetts, Nantucket, Cape Cod, going all the way up into most of Maine here. And then Nova Scotia is either in a warning or a watch. In New Brunswick, Canada, that's where you see St. John there. They're in a tropical storm watch for the possibility of tropical storm force conditions as we go into the weekend here. We'll show you our wind radius with Lee first because this thing is big. What it lacks in intensity, it makes up for in size, which is similar to what Sandy did in 2012. It was a Cat 1 at landfall, technically as a post-tropical cyclone, but the winds expanded well outside the center of the storm, and that's why there's so many Americans that are at risk of tropical storm force conditions over the next 48 hours. Tropical storm force winds extend about 300 miles wide outward from the center and 100 miles wide for hurricane force winds. That red area is going to shrink, but that yellow area probably stays about the same until it first makes landfall. Now remember, we've been talking about Lee for about 10 days now. Sean and I, or my weather brother Sean Subla, who's not with us today, have been talking about it. So we've been tracking this for a while, and now it's time for it to make landfall here. As we go into Saturday, this is the path here, moving almost due north, likely to make landfall as a tropical storm. There's an outside shot it could be a hurricane at landfall, but more than likely a tropical storm, likely in Nova Scotia. Now, if it hugs the far western part of that cone, yes, it will get the far eastern part of Maine, but that is unlikely here. We go into Sunday at 2 a.m., 50-mile-an-hour maximum sustained winds, but there's going to be tropical storm force winds in places like Caribou, Maine, far eastern Maine, getting into parts of Newfoundland here, which is where it will cross into as we go into Sunday afternoon. And then into Monday, it's a remnant storm here, just going out into the northern Atlantic Ocean. Eventually, it'll make its way to Europe, again, as a remnant storm. So you take a zoom out, this is what we're looking at in terms of its path. Here's a look at tropical storm winds here, or tropical winds, I should say. 39 miles an hour is tropical storm force winds. And you see we get close there in Cape Cod. I think gusts are certainly going to be in the 50s and 60s. There we go as we go into early Saturday. Tropical storm force winds in Cape Cod. And still gusting from Maine to Nova Scotia into Boston here. Strongest winds continue to look to be in Cape Cod. And then right next to where it makes landfall, like Nova Scotia there, where you see those reds. Then by Saturday evening, this thing tries to weaken in a hurry here. I think the winds really stop becoming an issue in Cape Cod as we go into Sunday night, and really for all of the United States by that point here. And then by Sunday, it's just a breezy day here across New England. Take a look at our forecast rainfall totals. Still expecting some flooding rain from Boston all the way up to Bangor, Maine, into portions of New Brunswick, Canada as well, where you see that red area. That's 2.5 to 4 inches of rain forecast here. Wave heights continue to be very high. Not a lot of cruise ships going between New York, Boston, Norfolk, all the way into Nova Scotia and Atlantic Canada. That's a good time of year to do that typically, but not when you got wave heights 40 feet high in spots. Rough surf, rip currents are going to be a problem here as we go really all weekend long from about Virginia on north. Sunday, the wave heights come down if you're Atlantic City on south, but there's still going to be some long wave periods, and that's going to enhance the risk for rip currents. And that's not all we're talking about in the tropics. We have Margot, which is a tropical storm in the eastern Atlantic. And then this guy that you see here, Tropical Depression 15. It is slated to become Nigel in the next 24 hours, moving to the northwest at 13 miles an hour. We take a look at the storm track here. You see him moving to the northwest. Will become a hurricane, but this should stay east of even Bermuda. So no threat to land here. So just to wrap up with our notes, Saturday night landfall in either eastern Maine or Atlantic Canada. Tropical storm force winds expected well outside of the center, and heavy rain and storm surge to continue as well. For the Lee Weather Team, I'm meteorologist Joe Martucci. We really thank you for watching these Hurricane Hunt videos for the past 10 days. We've got tremendous feedback on this, and we really appreciate it. We're hoping you're finding this information valuable, and we want to make sure everyone in Eastern New England, Atlantic Canada, stays safe over the weekend as well.